The 5 C's of leadership: courage, competence, because no one follows a dummy.
No.
Commitment to a core set of principles, beliefs, but you also have to have conviction. Because just because you're committed to something, you may not be convicted to it when something tough comes along. And then character. And character means doing what is right when no one's watching.
Created a faux stage where there was nothing under. They just put a topping, but they said to all of the models, do not walk there. There's nothing underneath that. So sure enough, the girl I was doing double with, didn't pay attention. We went down to the end, we came back, and we did a turn. And as I walked down to the end, I thought, there's no one next to me. So I posed at the end and kind of turned, and when I turned back around, I saw her from here up, giant eyes staring out of a pit at me, and one shoe by her ear, right at stage level. So I thought, what would Lucille Ball do? Because what else are you going to do? I thought, everyone's looking at me. I need to do something with this. So I turned back around. I went like this to the audience. I went, be right back, right? And turned around, walked over, offered my hand to the model, helped her up, put her in the shoe, and then went, take it away, with a hand gesture. And of course, the audience loved it because of what I did with that could have been a debacle. You can't act like it didn't happen. So comedy actually helps those scenarios tremendously.
Jan, we will never watch a fashion show or event again and not remember these stories. Isn't that right? You even as you were telling that story, there is this powerful grace, Jan, to you that I'm just amazed with. But I'm interested, Matthew, in you telling us some trends that we who are small businesses need to know. What's happening that are best practices that I need to know and our listeners need to know?
So I would say from a technology standpoint, it's right here. It's the mobile phone, right? So you saw those stats around if your website takes forever to load, people are going to jump to the next site. It's actually down to a few seconds, really. So as a small business owner, your website, first it needs to be found, right? But then if somebody actually does interact with it, it needs to be set up for iPhones and Samsungs and different things like that, but it needs to be really quick too. It needs to be easy to use, load really fast.
I would like to hear from you what your lessons are at this age that you've learned just about life that you'd share with anyone else at your age or adults, just about living a good life, doing it right.
One round of golf doesn't define you, and that doesn't just apply to golf. One day, 1 week, 1 year.
One mistake.
Absolutely. And it's not what happens, it's how you react to it. Because, you can't go back in time, but you can change, what's going to happen. I think that's one thing that I've learned, in the past year or so. Because when you're out there, you only have 18 holes in that day. So if you hit a bad shot, you have to understand that everybody's going to hit bad shots most of the time.
She got a Ray Charles glasses, man. Look at her.
Anna, thank you so much for pulling.
She got a daggone Ray. Look at her.
But they were the
you
wrong
should keep them on. You should keep them on.
Let's see if I can read them any better.
You should keep them on.
Let's see.
1983, he invited Larry Speakes up. Larry Speakes was President Reagan's press secretary. And so I flew up with Larry, and it was just the two of us in the small little Air Force jet, 4-person jet. And it was about an hour flight, and we were talking about Capitol Hill and talking about his job in the White House. And then all of a sudden we realized we both loved baseball. And that was it. It was an instant connection. Went to the dinner. I made sure he got shown around. We had a great flight back. We really bonded that night. And got home and wrote him a letter. And then he wrote me a letter, how great it was to spend time together. And then I didn't hear from him for a year and a half. And I go back to one day I'm in my office working on Capitol Hill, and my assistant said, I've got Larry Speakes on the phone. And I thought, this is interesting. And so he said, hey, Dale, long time no talk. I said, yeah, how you doing? He said, I'm doing well. He said, I know you're busy. I'm busy. He said, I'd just like to ask you a question. How would you like to come work for the president and me? And it was as simple as that, and I got very flustered. I said, well, I got to talk to my boss about this.
And you were doing what at the time?
I was the chief of staff for a congressman, so I ran a congressional office for a congressman. And so so that was it. He had me down a couple of days later, and it was a surreal experience because it was the first time I'd ever been to the White House. You know, I lived in Washington for 3 or 4 years by that point, but never been to the White House, and got led into the Northwest Gate and walking up the driveway to the West Wing, and when the president's in the West Wing, there's a Marine guard at the door, dressed in, you know, the best dress blues that you can be in. And I was just a kid that didn't know anything, and I went to reach for the door, and that Marine in his white gloves pulled that door and saluted me and let me in, and I thought I could get used to this.
And when you say trades? I say trades, I mean plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, sheet metal mechanics, electricians, just the construction trades in general. Over time, there's been other industries that have been taking up a lot of what the people who would normally come into the trades. And so there's other options out there, or, you know, some kids coming out of high school don't know that that option exists.
I think that's true.
Right.